Welcome, everybody, to this session. You see the title of the session to make sure you're in the right room. My name is Anita Crawley. I'm an educational consultant focusing on equity, online learning, and student support. I'm currently working at Hartnell College in Salinas, California. And I'm committed to giving our presenters the maximum amount of time. So I'm going to just do a few housekeeping chores, and then I'm going to bow out. We are recording the session, and once the closed captioning is updated, the team will share those links with you. If you would like captioning during the session, take a look at the bottom of your screen and look for the closed captioning button, where you'll see some options for you to select. You can turn those on or off as you prefer. And I think the presenters will monitor the chat, and I will watch the time. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and I'm going to pass it to Doug Holton, who will lead us off. Doug, it's all yours.
Sure, and actually Laurimar is going to introduce our session, so I'll let her kick it off. No problem. Thanks.
Well, thank you again for having us, and thank you to all of you for joining us. We know that you have different sessions you can choose from, so we're thankful that you've chosen to be here with us. And so we hope to share with you some short evidence-based strategies for improving student success and equity in your courses. My name is Laurimar Paniagua. I am accompanied by my colleagues, Doug Holton and David Reddy, presenting this workshop today. All of us are with Hillsborough Community College in Tampa, Florida, and we work with an online department here at the college. David and myself are online retention coordinators, and Doug is one of our instructional designers. All of us also have part-time classes that we do. So we are presenting these strategies to you, not only from conversations we have with students with regards to retention and issues that we're seeing come up, but we're also sharing them as strategies that we've been able to implement in the classroom and that we have found helpful. And so we certainly hope that you will find it helpful as well. As we get started, I wanted to let you know, Doug has put together some resources, and we'll show you that page in just a little bit, but they are in the, back to the first slide, I'm sorry. They're in the bit.ly site that's here at the bottom of the screen. So if you would like to get more details on the strategies that we're going to be sharing with you, if you would like to see some of the research that's behind each one of these strategies, we are just going to touch on them. And so if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can go to this bit.ly site is bit.ly/student success 23. Or you could use a QR code that's there. And during our session as well, we want to welcome you that if you would like to share any comments, if you would like to share strategies that you're currently using that are helpful and you feel would be helpful to all those attending here today, by all means, please use the chat to share those helpful tips as well. Next slide, please. So the goals for this presentation are to help identify and apply some of these short strategies, and to also give you some research-based strategies that you can go into and look with more detail later on through that bit.ly document that Doug prepared. So the intent is not that you would use every one of these strategies during every one of your courses during or in all your different formats, but instead that you would be able to find a handful of strategies and decide where you would use these. Next slide, please. Before we get into our strategies, one of the things that we want to do, because again, we want to present to you strategies, not only ours, but to let you know that there are others that have put together extensive research, and they've put out some incredible resources that are available to you Some of those are here on the screen that you'll see, and they have different tips. They also have the data or the research that has gone into some of these strategies. So please feel free to look into that as you're looking for more strategies to implement in your classrooms. Next slide, please. One of those that has also gone before us, if you will, who has put together with the Peralta conference. He's worked with them in putting this equity, design for learning equity matrix together as Dr. Kelly. And so again, we just want to tell you these strategies that we're giving you. It's just a small window, but there are so many resources out there, and we really want to encourage you to check those out and to ask questions and to look at the research so that you can see the difference that these make. Next slide, please. And so what are the characteristics of the strategies we want to share with you? Well, we know that lesson planning can take quite a bit of your time as you're getting ready for your classes. And so what we wanted to do was give you something short and easy to implement in your classrooms. We also want to give you strategies that will work with online as well as hybrid or face-to-face. So we wanted to give you a variety of different strategies. Of course, we want to make sure that all of them have research behind them. And so there's evidence that these work. And finally, these strategies you'll find much like we tell students with a syllabus, right? If you look at the syllabus, if you go through it, it seems like a lengthy document, but if you go through it and if you work with it, you will find that it will save you time as you go through this class. Same thing with these strategies. If you're able to implement some of these strategies, you'll actually see that some of them will help you save on time. Next slide, please. And so this is when you go to the bit.ly link and the QR code that we had at the beginning, this is what you're going to see. And it's a document that has a list with many links that you can click on. Again, you could further do explorations of each one of these strategies. You're going to see that there's some strategies here that we're not touching on during today's workshop. These are strategies that maybe we've touched on in prior workshops, and Doug was kind enough to include these here. Again, we want to give you a variety of strategies to put to work in your classes as you see fit. Some of these strategies, next slide, yes, are ready to upload if you have Canvas, if Canvas is what you use. Some of these slides are ready to upload into your Canvas course, and they will come in as modules. Again, just trying to make it very easy to use. This document is fantastic. I use it. I know David also uses it. So thank you, Doug, for putting that together for us.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, and my name's Doug Holton. I'm just going to jump right into some of the strategies since we don't have time to cover a whole lot. And at the end, again, in the chat, if you want to share any strategies that you use or any of the ones that we're sharing that you look interesting, that you might be interested in trying. This first strategy, it's not the most heavily researched strategy in a course context, but it's probably the oldest strategy. Whenever you're buying something online or so on, you want to hear what do other people think about that or how they review it. So, online reviews or talk to your family or friends. So this strategy, though, it's been applied in course context and online teaching context. Many online programs at different universities and colleges, they've shared videos where you hear testimonials from former students. And this is a great one. It's in the Canvas space. You can find this in other videos. I like this video in particular because it focuses on a lot of common misconceptions students may have about teaching. But today, I mainly want to talk about how you could apply this strategy in an individual course. And so I'm just calling it student testimonials, but a more technical concept connected to this idea is the sense of belonging, or what I put earlier, the social belonging interventions. This has been heavily researched in many different forms, but in this particular form, this is from one large research study where students read testimonials from previous students. And here's a written testimonial from a student in an online course talking about how at first they felt like they were different and didn't fit in, but after a few days, they realized other students felt the same way. And so you get some great advice, social emotional advice, and more practical advice sometimes, depending on what the testimonials say. So if you want to try this in your own class, you can either contact former students if you want. That's might be kind of challenging, because of the way our work, happens. We a lot of times teach hundreds of students, but you could also make an activity at the end of the semester where you have your students either maybe write a short letter of advice to future students, or if you're using like a video tool like Microsoft Flip or the built-in video tool in your LMS, they can record a video kind of testimonial where they just ask them to give some advice. What tips do you have for future students? And then you can select some of those testimonials for future students to read or watch. And again, I have some examples in the Canvas space. Just one tip though is when you have students at the beginning of the semester read previous students, advice and tips, I wouldn't just say, hey, read these testimonials or watch them. I would maybe combine it with some activity so that they think about it more deeply, and also, to kind of encourage them to actually read them or watch them. And I have a sample activity in the Canvas course too. Again, we're trying to show strategies that have shown research that have improved student success or equity. This is from that earlier big study I mentioned. It showed that students who did that social belonging intervention persisted more in their class. Here's another study that showed how it benefited their GPAs a little bit, especially African-American students, and so on. So we're kind of going quickly through these strategies just to save time so we can share some. But again, all the resources and more details about each strategy are all online. So you can read the research or import the Canvas version or whatever you like. The second and actually sort of third strategy are probably the most heavily researched of the strategies we're sharing about today. And again, some of these strategies maybe you've already heard of. This one has been researched since I believe the 80s, values affirmation surveys. This is an example of it where students see a list of different common things and they're asked, select 2 or 3 of these values that are most important to you. Like it might be your relationships with your family or friends, or creativity or business kind of skills, or learning for the sake of learning. And then they answer some follow-up questions. The idea here is to first, they identify what they value and then connect those values to your course so that can help them persist. And yeah, there you go. Kevin uses this activity in his course. It's been, again, it's very well studied and very, you'll see in a minute, very amazing research results. I went ahead and combined it with a second type of survey just because it's kind of similar. This is called a goal setting survey. And again, I have it pre-made in Canvas if you want to import it and try it yourself. This is where you ask students about their goals and they try to identify their goals. And just like the other survey, the survey tries to help connect their goals to your course to see how taking your course might help them achieve their goals or get closer to the goals, however you might want to say. And again, both of those are in Canvas. This is from the same studies before. The affirmation intervention showed even bigger, completion rates with students who just took that survey. Again, these studies, usually it's a randomized design. They just have one random group of students who didn't do the survey and one group of students who did. And just from that short little survey, you see pretty significant, positive impacts on student success and equity. This is a study on the values affirmation intervention in week 3. I know this graph is I'm not really going through the details of every graph, so I know it's hard to digest, but in week 3 of a semester, students took the values affirmation intervention. And these 2 dark lines are the different achievement levels of white students and Black students, essentially. And you see after that week 3, the gap between white and Black students essentially disappeared. It's just, again, pretty amazing just from this one survey, how it can really help maybe hopefully change their achievement in the course. And this last one is from the goal setting survey. I don't have an equity kind of graph, but this was pretty amazing too. Again, the only difference between these 2 groups of students, whether they took that goal setting survey and the students who took that survey, the next semester, they had like a ½ point higher GPA, which is just pretty amazing in my view. But so those are 2 interesting strategies. And the third one I'll quickly share before I pass it to back to my co-presenters is probably, again, some of you have probably heard this before too. It's been well researched and there's a lot of great online resources about it, but it's just transparent assignments and more generally transparent teaching. This is just in a common sense way. It's when you look at most assignments and activities and courses, a lot of times we tend to just jump right into, here's what you do, go do this, do that. This strategy just kind of encourages you to take a step back and first kind of try to explain to the students, why are we doing this assignment or this activity or whatever, how might it benefit them maybe later in this course or in a future course, or of course, how might it benefit them in the real world? And there's a template on the Transparent Teaching site or in Canvas, I have a copy of it, where it kind of has some guidance on how to write about the purpose of the assignment, spell out very specifically the tasks they need to complete in the assignment. Like when I do discussion activities, I tend to put step 1, step 2, and so on, because otherwise I find, some students may forget the final step, which is often, maybe replying to other students. And then finally being as concrete and explicit as you can about the criteria for success on your assignment or activity. Rubrics are a common thing, but sometimes even better is if you can share examples of previous student work, like exemplars. And again, so this is just the shortest example from the Transparent Teaching site. Yeah, I can find, and that's in the handout. You'll see transparent assignments right there, and that actually links to the Canvas example that I have. But then you can click on this link to Transparent Teaching, which I'll go ahead and paste in the chat. But this is the shortest example they have. Originally, as in a science class, it just said, read this poster and answer the following questions. So you see, they kind of just jumped right into it. So they revised it though to talk more about why are we doing this assignment. It was primarily to prepare them for later in the semester when they're going to create their own scientific poster. So, and again, I know a lot of this sounds like common sense, but again, when you look at most assignments, the three of us, we see a lot of courses and activities, and again, a lot of times we tend to just jump right into here's what to do rather than taking that step back. There's been several very large scale studies on transparent teaching. It's been shown to as students who have more transparent assignments have more employer valued skills, higher academic confidence, and higher sense of belonging. And there's some other graphs from this study too that show the benefits for different populations of students, like first generation students or low socioeconomic students. The benefits are even greater. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to pass it back to Laurimar for our next strategy.
Thank you. So strategy is teaching help seeking, and it might seem like common sense. Well, if you have a question, you just ask, right? Well, no, a lot of our students, we don't know where they're coming from, and we don't know what experiences they've had in the past when they've asked questions. And this can really get in the way of learning. And so what are some of the things that we can do to help students? I'll give you an example. One of the things David and I do as part of our team every day is we are responding to students that are at risk. And so we'll talk with them to see what they have done, to see where we can come in and help them towards success. And recently I was talking with one student and I said, okay, well, when you spoke with your instructor, what did they say, or what's the plan going forward? And her response was, I don't know what they could do to help me. So she hadn't reached out. She hadn't even thought of that as one of the options. And again, it might seem common sense, but depending where we're coming from and what our prior experiences have been in asking for help, it could be a hurdle for students to get past, whether it is that they are scared to ask, or they're scared of what you might think as an instructor of them whenever they ask for help. We've had students say, and you've probably heard it yourself, we've had students say, well, I don't want my instructor to think that I'm dumb, or that I'm this, that I'm that. And so there's all sorts of reasons as to why students might not ask for help, and they might simply just not know. So how can we help teach them that not only should you ask for help, but this is a place where it's safe to ask for help. This is a place where we expect that you will ask for help. This is a place where you need to ask for help so that you can be successful in your college journey. Next slide, please. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that we can do here to help the student. The first one on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see it's a template that you can put and just have it ready. You can word it the way that you would like to. And these are just some points that you can include in a template to give to students. And what this does is it gives students something from the instructor that says, oh, if I have a question, this is how I can start to address it. If I don't know how to even start asking my question, well, here's a template that my instructor gave me, right? And so we can tell them the basics of a proper greeting. You've certainly received emails from students where you know that this might even be something that they're not sure about, how to address your instructor, how to do a proper greeting, right? We're trying to train them so that they can be successful in their career as well. So it starts here. We tell them about the assignment, to make sure that you include the assignment, right? We always talk about make sure you include your name, your student ID, whatever it is that you would like for them to include whenever they're reaching out to you. If it's a contact number, how you're going to reach out to them. And what this is going to do is tell the student, not only do they expect that I will be asking questions, but this is the way that I can do it. And it gives them a format not only to ask questions in your class, but in other classes as well, in case they haven't received something like that. The other thing that we could do is, and this is on the right side of the slide, is repetition on our part whenever we're communicating with students. So we naturally send out lots of messages, whether it be through email or announcements in our classes. And one of the things that we know with learning, it's repetition, repetition, repetition. And so one of the things that you can do is continuously repeat that you are expecting those questions, that you welcome those questions, how they can get a hold of you, what your preference is for them to communicate with you, what your office hours are. But giving the students this information over and over and over drives home that message that I expect you will have questions. You can come here safely and expect that we're going to have a good conversation with regards to the questions that you might have. And you could leave here feeling good that now you know how to move forward. And David?
Thanks, Laurimar. Appreciate that. So I want to go over these next few strategies. And this first one here is called wise feedback. So wise feedback is really something that we're already doing as instructors. We're just giving feedback to our students, but we're doing it in a very targeted way. And so wise feedback is allows you to convey your high expectations and your genuine belief that students can meet those high expectations. So of course, just giving assurances and encouragements to students isn't going to let them be great students, right? It's not going to make them all of a sudden figure out how to complete these difficult assignments that they're working on. But what it is going to do is it's going to hopefully remove any of the belief that the comments that you're giving them is coming from any other place than performance-based comments, right? Some of our students come in and they feel like they're dealing with some stigma, they're dealing with things that they're bringing with them into the learning experience. And so when they get comments from their instructors, they don't always know where those comments are coming from. And they might even assume that some of these comments are more pointed than they are. So this is a really good thing this is a really good strategy you can use as opposed to giving maybe some traditional feedback, because it's going to maybe clarify your intention and to the student as you give your feedback. And so so let's go over some ingredients about how that would look. So Doug, if you don't mind switching over to that next slide. So when we're using wise feedback, what we're doing is we're creating this frame, and then this frame is then essentially going to be the support from which we can then give our feedback. And so when you're writing your feedback, you're going to write something like, I'm giving you this feedback because I've had high expectations and I know you can reach them. This feedback is designed to get you there, right? And then from there, you're going to give all your constructive feedback. And that's important. We want to make sure that we're being really specific with the feedback that we're giving, because that, again, is going to help put the onus on the performance part of the assignment rather than the natural ability that the students might have. And so I teach a first-year seminar class, and I have students that come in, and they're generally a lot of first-gen students come in there. A lot of students who maybe are non-traditional and have been out of school for a while, and they come into the class, and we do a writing assignment in there where they're writing about their experience as a student. So I allow them the opportunity to write one first draft of that, and then I'll give them some comments, and they'll revise their assignment based on the feedback that I give them, and at the end, then they'll get a final grade there. And so, I feel like this has been very helpful in that particular assignment, because it allows them to understand that I'm giving them some specific feedback about how they can improve, their assignment, and they're understanding that I'm able to understand them as learners. So another thing that's really important about using wise feedback is making sure that your feedback is authentic, because what you want to do is make sure that anytime that you're writing some instructions to students, it sounds like it's coming from you and it's not generic, because we don't want them to misinterpret what we're saying. And the other thing is, we don't want to give false hope. If students need to do some maybe work on some structure or something in a writing assignment, we want to make sure that we're not just kind of writing something generic where they're not really focused on that, and they're maybe focused on that they are a good student or aren't a good writer. And so making sure that your feedback is authentic is really, really important. Another really nice thing, and this is maybe where that time-saving part comes in, is that you can select the assignments that you want to use in advance with this. Now, for me, I notice in the fall term, usually that big first assignment is kind of where I see is the first pain point. And a lot of students, for whatever reason, maybe takes that assignment and they don't do as well as they wanted to. And that can be a little deflating for them. So maybe they start to lose interest in the course, they start to drop out. And so I find that maybe targeting this kind of feedback for those that moment in the semester works well to help keep students engaged. And so you can do that, maybe before those big holidays as well. That sometimes can happen right before maybe spring break. You know that coming back, students are maybe going to have a hard time getting back into the academic mode. And so you may be targeting for that time period. This is a really good strategy to use for that. Another thing that you can do with this is that you can craft multiple statements in advance, and that's a little bit also of the time saving there. You can, there's different variations about how you can write that you're giving feedback to support them and that you have high expectations, and just writing those stems in advance in your voice can help you so that you can just focus on then giving the feedback based on whatever the assignment is. Another thing that I like to do is also encourage people to refer campus resources when possible, because I think that we're on these institutions, we're here with our students, and it really is a community as much as anything. And if we want our students to feel like they're part of that community, they need to have interaction and connection with that community. So I think it's really critical to use and refer back to resources so that students can learn, yes, I can go to these other places for help, and I know how to get help, as like Laurimar was just talking about on her slide. And it reinforces, and in your comments, it reinforces that, you're signaling that, yes, you are part of this community. And if you want some additional help, here are some places you can go. So three tips for using wise feedback. So the first one is, that's really important. Make sure that you keep all comments and all your critiques based on performance rather than their students' natural ability. Again, this is a tool that's meant to use with students who maybe are coming in and have some kind of negative thinking about their ability as a student. And so we want to encourage them kind of, instead of maybe focusing on the fixed mindset, we want them to focus on that growth mindset. And so one really important thing is just to make sure that all your critiques and all your comments are really geared towards helping that student figure out how they can improve on their performance. The next point really here is to point out the good bits. I really think this is important because I'm sure everybody likes to get compliments, right? If you're constantly, as a student, getting a lot of feedback, it seems like it could be very critical. Sometimes it can maybe sap some of the motivation. It makes you feel like, hey, I'm not getting this. But when someone can stop and say, hey, you know what, I see you, you're doing really well, you've improved in this area, I really like this idea. I noticed you did really good on this math test, you've improved. When you can point out the good stuff, it really helps the students feel like they're on the right track and lets them know that as instructors, we're seeing the progress that they're making. And that just feels good. And so I always encourage people to do that. There's different ways to do it. I point out naturally as it happens. But for some people, maybe a more structured approach is better. And so maybe for every 3 critical notes you give, maybe give a positive note in there. And that's just something that's going to help keep the students going as they're grinding through the term. And then the last point here is just to always offer the opportunity to discuss feedback. I talk about this a lot with Laurimar. On our campus, I hear instructors talk a lot about, well, students really don't come to office hours, and I don't understand, why nobody comes and talks with us. But I often think that sometimes students don't see office hours the way that we do. Perhaps there's even a negative connotation. Or some students are they're just intimidated because they're new and they haven't really been in this type of an academic setting before. So, you know, they don't necessarily understand how office hours works and why it's beneficial to them. So, you know, I'll write into my comments, you know, please come see me if you have any questions about this, if you want to talk through this a little bit more, if there's anything else you'd like clarification on, you know, I'll write that in there. And I'll also even say that during class time. But I think writing that into your feedback is important because it's, again, signaling that belonging that we're trying to achieve. So what are the benefits of this? Well, when teachers really can clarify why they're giving feedback, you know, students are going to become more trusting and they're going to be able to focus on the work, which is going to hopefully, in the long run, improve their grades. This is some research you can get in the bit.ly if you're interested in reading this. I think this one comes from Harvard. And so there's basically two groups, one student group that of African Americans that got the WISE feedback, and then another group that just kind of got the standard feedback. And of course, the group that got the WISE feedback, 64% of them revised their assignment. And of those 64% that revised, 88% of their scores improved. So, and there's some research that does show that this is something that can be useful and does work with students. So this next one is just a really, really quick, simple one. It's just called nudging, right? And we do this anyways. I'm sure if you're like me, you're always writing, you're making little announcements to the students throughout the term, making your little announcements in your LMS. Maybe even sometimes you guys are sending emails throughout the term, and that does work. So if you're doing that, great. If you're not, you know, this is something maybe you can kind of put into your tool bag to help you maybe try to motivate some students. So this graph that we're looking at here is essentially course A, course B. Right before a midterm, these instructors did a meeting intervention and an email intervention. And this just kind of shows that in a lot of cases, you know, they did this right before the midterm. They were able to improve students' scores, a whole letter grade just by taking the moment to give them a little nudge. And so, Doug, if you don't mind going to the next screen, baked into our LMS, we do have some tools that can help us with this and are really great time savers. Now, at our school, we use Canvas, and it's the one I'm the most familiar with. But if you have a different LMS that you use, you know, contact your instructional design team or your IT folks, because likely there's something baked in there, and they should be able to walk you through it. I've also seen that there's really good tutorials if you have access to LinkedIn Learning, or even in the LMS itself. There's oftentimes a lot of good tutorials. So if you're not a Canvas user, I apologize. This is about Canvas, but there's something likely similar that you have access to as well. So if you want to use this, the way you access this is you go to your grade book, and at the top of the grade book, you'll see that you'll have all your assignments there. And on each assignment, there's a little meatball menu, and you can click on that meatball menu and you'll get a little drop-down box. And if you choose the option that says message students who, a little box will open just as if you were to send an email. And then it'll give you some options to pick the type of assignments that you want to, the type of category you want to choose to contact students about. And so in this case, we've chosen haven't submitted yet. So all the assignments the students who haven't submitted this assignment automatically populate there, and your subject even, I believe, populates there. And then all you need to do is write a little message in there. And just doing something like this is very helpful to students, you know, because it goes straight to their inbox. They usually get a little message there that lets them know they have an email. And if they're working in Canvas or some other LMS, likely they're getting flooded when they open their pages up. So getting that direct message sometimes, just reminding them to turn in an assignment, or maybe even review an assignment, like a post-exam assignment. So, you know, we've just taken the assignment, please go back and review your materials, you know, so that you can have a good understanding of the material we just covered. Likely you'll see this again on midterms or in the final or something. These kind of little messages are really helpful. So here's a quick way to do that. So this next strategy here is just using mindfulness in the classroom. This is in all parts of our society now. I hear people talking about it when I listen to podcasts in different contexts, and I know it happens in the sports world. And it's kind of now becoming part of what we do in our society. And for a lot of students who come to our class that are first gen students or transitioning students, maybe this is something they're not aware of, and just kind of sharing this with them in class, I think can really help them focus and get themselves in a state so that they can approach maybe their assignments with a little bit more of an even head. And so what I explain to my students in my classes, I'll tell them, think of the word stop. And for each letter, there's a step that you can complete that will take you through this process to help you sort of relax and become more mindful. So S is, I would guide them, is just when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, maybe you're just sitting down to take that big test and your nerves are kind of jumbled up. This is a good time for you to kind of just stop, acknowledge that those feelings that you're having, and bring yourself in the moment and just kind of focus on how you're feeling. And then once you've got a sense of that, excuse me, you can take over to the next letter, move over to the next letter, which is T, and you can take 3 deep, slow breaths. So the key to this is make sure that they're controlled breaths. And I like to guide, a slow inhale, hold for 5 to 7 seconds, and then a slow exhale. And that just really focusing on your breathing. And once you've completed that step, you can go over to O. And this is really HTC, which is just hear, touch, and see. And this is really about observing. So it's just grounding yourself in your current state. So what are the sounds that are happening around you? If you're sitting by a window, are there sounds that are coming in from that window? If you're sitting on a chair, how does it feel? How does your state of your body? What can you see around you? So just doing that can help you ground you in the moment. And then after you've done that, you can proceed to the next task. So is this going to give you the answers to the math test, or is it gonna be able to solve all your problems? No, but it's going to put you in a better state so that hopefully you can approach whatever task you need to do, focused on that task specifically, and hopefully in a more calm state. So in the bit.ly, we do have a video that you can look at. This professor explains this technique I just discussed with you. It's something you can do, as Doug was mentioning in his slide about affirmations. It's really good to have students sort of reflect on these so they can really internalize some of these strategies that we're sharing with them. And so perhaps you can break them into groups and have them talk about their experiences, or maybe even write a reflection paper in the class, and they can just kind of spend some time learning about mindfulness and how it can apply to different aspects of their life, including their academic life. And so benefits of mindfulness. So of course, if we can do this, hopefully we can reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. And I find typically some combination of those 3 are involved in some level of procrastination. And if we can reduce those things, then likely we can improve critical thinking, creativity, resilience, and our overall well-being. And I mentioned it as I was just talking through this, but I find this is really good for first generation students, and it's really works good with students who are in transition. So I'm here at a 2-year institution, and a lot of them get nervous about going into a medium-sized pond where we are, into maybe a much larger use institution. And so just having some of these little tools to put in their tool bag to help them through those transitions can be very helpful for a lot of students. And this last slide I have to share with you is not so much a strategy, but it's something that we did at our school. And I wanted to share it with you in case it's something that you find to be valuable. So last fall, I was thinking about ways that we could support our students and our online students. And so at our school, we have 5 different campuses that are throughout Tampa area. And so I was able to get a counselor from each campus, and we sat down. We were talking about some of the things that are affecting our students. What are the things that our students are concerned about, or maybe are weighing in on them, or preventing them from being their best ability to be a good student. And so we came up with like 12 different areas. And as you scroll through this kit, you'll see there's different resources in different categories with different resources. And you can click on these links, and they're either free or low-cost resources and areas to get information. And this was just an idea to support our students, to signal to them that we care about them. We want them to be successful, that they're not alone. And if they need help, there are places they can get help. And I've had conversations with students here that I talk to on a daily basis, and some of them, I have to call them because they're so intimidated, or they're so scared to reach out. They will not ask for help. And so just putting something like this up where a student can access it and kind of read through it and start to maybe understand more about how they're feeling or where to get help or get some information in general, can go a long way in helping them focus on being a student, but also just focus on their overall wellness as a person. And that we really care about that as educators. We want our students to be well balanced and not just academic machines. So if this is something that you're interested in, click on the bit.ly link. You can scroll through this. Feel free to contact me if you had any questions or you want to talk about it. I'm happy to do that. But ultimately, maybe this is something that would benefit you on your campus. So if you like this, perhaps you could get a group together, and this is something that you could employ at your institution.
Okay, and I know we've run pretty long. I'm just going to quickly share one more strategy. I just wanted to emphasize again, we're not just sharing strategies we think are cool or we think students would like. There's like each one of these items, for example, is there's a research study behind it that, so we're trying to show stuff that there's some evidence that really will help students. And this is the last example we'll give is a lot of students, their performance can sometimes suffer because of the anxiety or stress, especially from high stakes testing. In terms of interventions to help students with that test stress or anxiety, there's been two main strategies, and there's also a new study I'll tell you about in a second. The first strategy is called stress reappraisal or anxiety reappraisal. The previous slide, that's from a TED talk of a person explaining this idea. So this is an activity I have in Canvas where students learn about how to separate the physical from the mental aspects of stress, how to reinterpret that stress, how, evolutionarily speaking, that stress response is helping us prepare to meet some challenge. So you can kind of reinterpret it in a little bit more positive or constructive manner. And it's been shown to help students. The second activity that's been used in this situation is expressive writing. I'm not a therapist or a counselor, but this sounds similar to kind of stuff that might be used in those contexts. If you're stressed out about something's on your mind, just write out, put it down on paper, write about what you're thinking about before this test. And again, there have been several studies on both of these strategies. This is from the expressive writing showing improvements on their test scores and so on. Another one showing how it especially benefits lower income students. And there's several other studies too. I just want to mention there is a new version that last year there was a study published where they combined these activities and growth mindset. They just haven't shared the activities yet. There is an email address at the bottom of this page though, if you do want access to them. So I'll put the link in the chat real quick. That's pretty much all we have time for today. We've only covered 7 or 8 strategies. And again, in the handout, there's several others that you can find more details about. Some we didn't cover because there's already so well known, I would hope, like open textbooks or growth mindset and so on, that they have benefits to not just student success, but equity as well. So feel free if you, in the remaining time, if you care to share any strategies that you use in your class to help your students with their success, or if you, any of the strategies we talked about today, you find helpful, please feel free to share about them in the chat. If you go to the bit.ly link, and let me just copy that one last time, it will actually take you to this Google Drive folder, which has a link to the handout that we've shown before, these slides, a downloaded version of the Canvas space, which is, you can click preview and here to see that. For those who maybe don't use Canvas, it should work to import in other LMSs, but of course I don't have a way to test that. And then there's some bonus handouts that I've used before with faculty, many of which are connected to the strategies. Like one I like a lot is called the, this is copyrighted, so I don't know, but you can Google it, the growth mindset feedback tool. It has common sort of feedback phrases to use, so similar to what David was talking about before, wise feedback. So there's hopefully some helpful resources there. And again, we'd love to hear more from you about other resources or strategies you find helpful as well. And thank you very much for joining our presentation today.
Thank you so much. I have some background in this area and I have 2 burning questions. They are not easy questions, but I would love any one of the 3 of you to respond. One is your resources are over the moon, amazing, but how does the faculty decide proactively or reactively? And I think there's a case for both. How do you find the one that's or how do you select which intervention to use? That's one question. The other question has to do with referrals to any support services outside of the faculty, the instructional faculty. How do you make good referrals? How do you make them stick? On campus, we take their hand, we introduce them to a human being. Don't do that online. If you just spend a few minutes responding to either one or both, I would love it.
Well, I could take the second question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say, and I'm not saying this is the best way to do this, but this is what we do, and so far it seems to be working. But at our school, we actually have something called Dropout Detective. And so if you're not familiar with Dropout Detective, it's like basically an online database that if you teach an online class, you have access to. It automatically pops up in your class. And it's kind of a central communication hub. So you can see a dashboard when you click in there of all the students in your class. And it gives you lots of information about, when they last turned in assignments and what their grade is, and it'll show you all kinds of really neat graphs and things like that. And from there, you can directly message one of us, who are online coordinators. And what we'll do is we'll get the student's name and we'll contact them. And then so that's in the online space. And we found this is really working because we have access to their phone numbers. We have access to all the information that's online. We're pretty good at our school about encouraging students to make sure they're updating their information, especially in the online learning space. And so we can provide that support for them. And we'll usually contact them in Teams. We'll send them messages in email. We'll call them. We're having discussions about how the best way to reach them through text messages. We haven't done that yet, but I suspect that will be another. So we're hitting them on lots of different fronts. And I would say, and I don't know what the exact number is, but I would say we have a very high response rate at our school, just kind of using that system. I don't know, Laurimar, is there anything else you'd maybe add to that?
Well, one part of the question was also, how do you make it stick?
Yes.
And so one of the very first things that we try to emphasize when we're talking with faculty, it matters how early you send out that referral. So if we're getting that referral within the first few weeks of the semester, it makes a difference versus when we get that referral when it's almost time to withdraw and the faculty is essentially telling us, let them know if they don't get this done, they should withdraw because they're not doing well. What we want to do to make it stick is to let the student know early on what the support services are, how we can help them even then, and answer their questions that they might have early on, connect them to resources early on, finding out what those issues are that they're having, if they're in the hospital, if it's a daycare need, if it's a food need. But the earlier that we can connect with that student, to me, that is how we can really make that referral stick. I could comment on, I don't know, because I'm looking at the time, I could comment on the first question that you said, how do you know which one to use? For me, one of the things that has been essential and it has just conversation with my peers, right? As you have conversations with others who are teaching some of the same classes that you're teaching, and you can bounce ideas back and forth, you can bounce some of those difficulties. There's always someone who has tried it a different way that maybe you didn't think about, or maybe there's a strategy that you do it part this way, but then part with another. You can mix and match them and do all sorts of different things, but it starts sometimes with a conversation, not trying to figure it out on your own. That's what we tell the students, right? That was my slide, which is, help seeking. So we also have to, as faculty, be willing to look for help, not just say, okay, well, these are the resources, I should be able to figure it out. No, have a conversation with one of your peers, go out for coffee and talk about the different things that you're trying, what's frustrating, what's not working, what is working. And in this way, you can maybe filter out a little bit some of the things that you might try next.
Great point. Anybody else would like to voice a question?
Well, and as we do, we might
Awesome.
want to start shifting to the next one. So we
Yeah.
do have to, as many great ideas as there are, we have to make room for the next great ideas. But we'd like to thank the folks from Tampa and Hillsborough Community College. Thank you so much for sharing all of these ideas. And we have already posted your bit.ly link on the website under your session, so people can get to it. If you're watching the recording, you have access to those resources as well. And everyone, in about 13 minutes, we're going to start another great session like this in rooms A, B, and C. So go back to the schedule at a glance and find the session for you. I'll post that link in the chat real quick here.
Thank
Thank
you
you very
so
much for
much.
having.
Thanks a lot.
Sorry,
Thank you
Excellent.
for having us.
Have a great
Thank
afternoon,
you.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.